Aragua cartel launched its largest convoy across the desert. At first, it looked like U.S. forces had no chance of stopping it, but what happened in the next 30 minutes shocked everyone watching and changed the entire balance of the fight against Venezuela's most dangerous cartel. At exactly 1:45 p.m., under the open sky, a massive convoy of the Tren de Aragua cartel rolled across a desert road. More than 300 vehicles stretched in a long column, their headlights cutting thin beams into the sand and rock. Trucks carried fighters armed with RPG-7s, PKM machine guns, and belt-fed DSHK heavy weapons mounted on pickup trucks. Other vehicles carried Zu-23 autocannons welded onto the backs of technicals, creating mobile anti-air platforms. To the cartel, this was more than a movement of fighters. It was a display of confidence. They believed they could cross undetected, linking routes between Venezuela and partner smuggling networks deeper into Central America. They believed no one would dare touch them in the open desert. But they were wrong. The convoy was not moving blind. Intelligence had followed every step. U.S. reconnaissance satellites from the National Reconnaissance Office had tracked them from staging points connected back to Venezuela, where Tren de Aragua first rose to power. MQ-9 Reaper drones shadowed them from high altitude, sending real-time video to U.S. command posts. The convoy thought the desert's emptiness meant safety, but to U.S. forces it was the perfect kill zone. Wide open, nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Cartel leaders inside armored SUVs barked orders over radios, confident in their firepower. They had fought local police and militias before. They had survived clashes with Venezuelan security forces, often bribing officials or overpowering them with raw numbers. But this was not Venezuela. This was a battlefield watched and prepared by the United States military. As the convoy crossed deeper into its route, the stage was set. SEAL teams were already in position. Hidden in ridgelines overlooking the convoy's path, snipers with Mk-13 Mod 7 rifles lay prone, their scopes locked on the lead vehicles. Each sniper had coordinates pre-calculated. Beside them, spotters tracked wind and distance, waiting for the command. The desert was quiet, only the faint rumble of engines carrying across the night. Every second brought the convoy closer into range. At 1:52 p.m., the order came. Open fire. Crack after crack echoed across the desert as 300 Winchester Magnum rounds punched through the first vehicles. Tires exploded, engines caught fire, and the convoy's lead elements ground to a halt. The desert road became a wall of smoke and flames. Immediately, electronic warfare teams activated jammers, cutting the cartel's radios into static. Panic spread as fighters shouted over dead frequencies, unable to coordinate. Within moments, the convoy's confidence shattered. The fighters realized they were not ambushing. They were the ones trapped. What looked like an easy drive through the desert had turned into the beginning of their destruction. And this was only the first strike. The real hammer was still waiting above. The ambush had only begun. While the lead vehicles burned on the road, U.S. command centers thousands of miles away watched everything unfold in real time. The convoy was never moving freely. For days, intelligence satellites had tracked every assembly point, every fuel stop, and every vehicle leaving Venezuelan staging grounds before crossing into international smuggling routes. Analysts at the National Reconnaissance Office and Central Command had pieced together the picture. This was not a small unit, but one of the largest Tren de Aragua movements outside of Venezuela. Trucks loaded with ammunition, crates of smuggled rifles, RPG tubes, and bundles of narcotics rolled side by side with heavily armed technicals. The column stretched for miles, a perfect target glowing in infrared against the cold desert floor. By 2:10 p.m., confirmation came from multiple drones. MQ-9 Reapers circled high, their sensors marking every heat signature, tagging every vehicle with digital identifiers. An RQ-4 Global Hawk at even higher altitudes scanned the region, ensuring no escape routes remained undetected. To the cartel, their headlights made them look like predators cutting across the night. To U.S. forces, those headlights outlined a trail straight into a kill zone. SEAL sniper teams fired again, dropping more vehicles in the center of the convoy to trap them between burning wrecks. Cartel fighters scrambled out, spraying fire wildly with PKM machine guns and 7.62 2mm rifles, but they were firing into empty ridges, blinded by jammers and night. SEALs had already shifted position, moving silently with night vision goggles and suppressed rifles, unseen but deadly. That was when the sky above came alive. At 20,000 feet, a pair of F-15E Strike Eagles locked onto the rear elements of the convoy. Their targeting pods glowed as coordinates fed in from drones. At 2:15 p.m., the first strike fell. GBU-38J dams detached and dropped silently before erupting into massive fireballs. Fuel tankers exploded in a chain reaction, sending shockwaves down the desert valley. Entire clusters of cartel vehicles were engulfed in flames within seconds. Panic took hold. Surviving drivers tried to swerve off the road, scattering into the open sand.
The dense jungles of Venezuela at night are not silent. They breathe, whisper, and watch. Crickets shriek in uneven rhythms, rivers move like restless serpents, and in the humid air, even the leaves seem alive. For the Tren de Aragua, Venezuela's most feared criminal syndicate, this darkness has always been their shield. For years, their convoys moved undisturbed, carrying drugs, weapons, and human cargo across hidden jungle routes, defying governments, terrorizing civilians, and enriching themselves in blood. But this night, the jungle belonged to someone else. Miles above the canopy, U.S. Air Force reconnaissance drones circled, capturing every movement with thermal imaging. Every engine roar, every cigarette glow, every convoy truck was marked, tracked, and logged. The target? A heavily armed column of trucks, 30 vehicles strong, belonging to Tren de Aragua, heading toward the Colombian border. Intelligence suggested that this convoy carried not only drugs but also advanced weapons smuggled from rogue Russian dealers, weapons that could destabilize entire regions. Washington had decided, this threat would not reach its destination. Inside a forward operating base, deep within Allied territory, Navy SEALs huddled over a holographic projection of the convoy route. Faces were covered in camouflage, voices low but sharp with precision. The SEAL commander, a veteran of dozens of operations, pointed to the glowing red dots moving across the map. They think they're invisible in that jungle. But we see everything. Tonight, gentlemen, we end this. The SEALs knew the stakes. Tren de Aragua wasn't just another cartel, it was a shadow army, spreading from Venezuela into Colombia, Peru, Chile, and even Spain. Their cruelty was infamous, villages burned, civilians executed, families enslaved. For the U.S. to act meant the situation had reached a boiling point. And tonight, the boiling pot would spill. At precisely 0200 hours, the operation began. The night sky split open as U.S. Air Force AC-130 gunships circled into position. Their cannons and precision-guided weapons were ready, but tonight they would serve as overwatch. The real hunters were already moving silently beneath the jungle canopy. Navy SEAL squads, dropped hours earlier by stealth helicopters, were now in ambush positions along the convoy's route. Faces glistened with sweat, rifles pressed against shoulders, hearts steady. The convoy roared closer. Trucks laden with crates of cocaine and rifles, SUVs with mounted machine guns, motorcycles weaving like shadows. The cartel soldiers laughed, oblivious to the crosshairs already fixed on them. One sang drunkenly, another fired his AK into